Now we're doing another Roman session today, so we're the second into 8. So I would like to first of all ask: has anyone got any Roman news for me this week?
Yes, I have, Carl.
Oh, now come on! If you've been metal detecting on a
No, no,
scheduled
no.
protected ancient monument
I
and found
have
a
to
Roman.
share. I have to share this with you.
All right, go
I
on.
was watching a program recently on the great hotels of the world,
Yeah.
and they were in Caesar's Palace, Las Vegas, with all the Roman architectural style, which I've been to, of course, like most people,
Well, no, the Romans got to Las Vegas, didn't they?
And this lady went up to the manager and said, "Did Julius Caesar actually live here?"
Oh.
Only American would say that.
Great, didn't it? And I have to share this with you, Carl, because I mentioned this the others last week. That particular lady, whoever she was, would probably have believed the headline: NASA's drone surveying the landscape of Mars at the moment has found evidence of Roman occupation.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
And do you know?
What do you think? What do you
No,
think?
we're not going to think. We're just going to agree with it because
Can you beat that?
yeah, I can actually beat that, and I feel really, really guilty. But hopefully, the person involved isn't gonna. As you know, I had to take a Wednesday off recently because I was filming, and it was at Castel Corch, and we were doing like it was a very expensive video for the rap singer Jay-Z, right? And it was a song associated with King Henry VIII, right? So Jay-Z was dressed up as King Henry VIII. You can't make this up, and lots of his fans came along. So his fans were wandering around the castle, and one of the fans came up to me, and she said, "Oh, I heard you're also an archaeologist," and I said, "Yes," and she said, "Oh, I think it's amazing that we've still got a castle in Wales still standing that Henry VIII stayed at."
Oh, well. It says everything, doesn't it?
And I tell you what, she was so convinced I actually agreed with her. Because sometimes, Bill, right, what goes on in people's heads need to continue going on in their heads because I think it's better off that way.
And don't forget that there's a Castle Cork in my steak as well. Don't forget that. The original one.
And do you want me to compete with that one? You can tell this is very competitive this week. When I was working at Hollybush Farm just outside Cowbridge, and by the way, the turkey's keeping me getting too excited. So when I get too excited, you know it gobbles, right? So if I talk calmly, I'm fine. When we were working outside Cowbridge at the medieval village at LANGFORD at my family's farm, there was a site nearby on Ward Farm called Castell Corch. So there's another there's 3 Castell Corchs that we know of. The question is, can somebody think of a 4th one in Wales? And I reckon they'll probably think of about another 10.
Yes, I can, Carl.
Oh God, this is not going well. Go on.
Yeah. Do you know the St Hilary transmitter, the other side of Cowbridge?
Oh, that's the one I'm talking about.
Well, that's the one, is it? There's one there as well. So I know 3 Castle Corks. Apart from Llangonide, Cardiff, and that one at St Hilary. Yeah. Not anymore.
Is Llangonide actually called Castle Corch then?
It is, yeah. It's 13th century, destroyed in 1282. That's the one I did a survey of. Remember, you asked for a survey. How would we actually choose a site to excavate if we had the choice and opportunity? That's the one. Oh, yeah.
And Bill, can you? I'm not going into any detail because one person knows what I'm talking about. If ever that site comes up for sale, let me know.
Yeah, well, some private land. I know the farmer, but yeah, I'd love to excavate that. I really would.
If he's ever selling that, just let us know. Okay, right. So what I want to do today is something nice and easy, and the backdrop is about one of the sites that we're going to actually visit. And one thing that we do know, I can remember years and years ago, I gave a talk about Roman and medieval gardens, and in Britain, and there's a Shire book about them. And when I was doing this talk to a horticultural society of all places in the middle of nowhere. And oh, Roger's just phoning me now. Just as we're talking about strange things, hang on. Roger, what's wrong?
It's Roger. Can you let me in?
Will I let you in? What, you're outside the door, are you? Oh, right, yeah. Yeah, sorry, Rog. Are you a bit late or something?
Yes.
Roger, it's okay. Don't worry. It's fine. Roger, baby. I'll forgive you. Okay, love?
Thank you. Yes.
Cheers, love.
Okay, mate.
Cheers.
Bye.
Obviously, the turkey didn't like Roger's voice.
The phone.
He don't like lots of things, right? Anyway.
Yeah, I'll carry on, man. Thanks.
Well, hang on a minute, Roger. I finished the conversation a couple of seconds ago.
Okay. I'm here now.
Yeah, oh no. I can tell you. I tell you what. This is going to be one. This is going to be one of those bloody afternoons.
Yeah.
Right. So, Roger, can you so you get into the theme of what we're doing today, which is not anything to do with what we're doing. We're supposed to be doing the Romans. Do you know of a castle Cork other than the one at Maesteg, other than the one at Cowbridge, and other than the one at Taos Wells? Do you know another castle Cork?
No.
Well, that's an absolutely pointless start. That. So right, okay. So I was mentioning gardens, and I was saying about medieval and Roman gardens in Britain and the evidence for them. So we know that throughout these different periods, we know that in the history people have got gardens, and no doubt they would have had flower beds and so on at Vindelander and Bird Oswald and so on. But one site in Britain that we got clear evidence of gardens and root systems is actually the site known as Fishbourne. Now, before the pandemic, it feels such a long time ago. Last year, we had planned a day trip to Fishbourne. What it was going to be, there was going to be me and 4 others jumping in my car, and we were going to go drive all the way down to Fishbourne. It never happened because the pandemic came in. So what I want to do is focus a little bit on Fishbourne. But before we actually get to Fishbourne, I want to do something completely different. And there's 2 other little themes that I want to do. So let's get on to it. So we're going to actually visit this site briefly, Binchester. Now, one of the things I can remember saying, this is actually a really useful plan, to be honest with you, because it's got everything on it that I would want to show you. So it was months ago now, we went over to the site at Ravensglass on the west coast, and I said that at Ravensglass you've got a bathhouse building with walls that are several meters high still, and alongside Dover and alongside Wroxeter, alongside the wall at Leicester. These are some of the tallest sets of Roman remains still standing above ground level in the whole of Britain. But one site that actually really competes with that, and there are other examples I may add, there's the Newport Gate, for example, at Lincoln. One site that really competes with that is Binchester. Now, I've never been to the Roman fort at Binchester. Vinovia, and I'm sure the word Vinovia must have something to do with wine or vineyards, vino. So one of the things with Binchester is that it's been very much in the news over the past few years for the wonderful state of the remains at Binchester, in a sense that the walls are still several meters in height still, but they were found below ground level, but the walls were several meters in height. And so I've got a tiny little bit of information that I'm going to read out about that now. So I'm just going to show you some more images. So Binchester is one of those sites that it'd be great to have a little trip to, because the remains are really, really well preserved. So if I show you, so Binchester there, and if we go on to, there's an aerial view of Binchester, and big chunks of Binchester haven't been excavated. This area has, and they have actually excavated some wonderful building walls at Binchester, and with that, it goes into the category of some of the tallest standing remains in Britain. So we'll just get on to that now, and here we go. And we're going to focus on this area: fort defences, Deer Street, the Roman road Deer Street. One of the things that we do have is a really nice number of names of Roman roads in Britain. So San Helen, and we got the Julius Maritime in Wales, for example, and you've got Water Street, which is very near Bill as well. And in England, you've got Watling Street, you've got Ermine Street, you've got Deer Street, Stane Street, lots of them. So I think that this is absolutely a fascinating image. This is amazing that you've got sets of Roman remains that are so well preserved. Because I can remember showing you this image in a class, and this is really intriguing. That not only do you have intact floor levels, you've got hypercore systems. This is a talk in itself that I'm not going to do in detail today. I'm just doing a little bit of an overview, and I'd like to come to this site again. But you've got wall plaster, you've got blocked up windows like that over there, and that little lady over there, and I don't mean patronising, she looks dwarfed by these walls. So you know, I do say a lot that if you go onto the continent, the Roman remains are far better preserved than over here. But we do actually, from time to time, have one or two surprises, and one or two surprises of walls that are really quite some height, in some height, several meters in height still. And you know, just behind this chap here, you've got these stones here that look really worn up to some kind of stairwell. And if we sort of move on to another image, and that's it cleaned up. So again, what we've just seen from that image is that's the blocked up window, or you could say a doorway. So a building like that is really interesting from many different levels, because you do have those levels actually, and you do have evidence of earlier walls and changes and wall plaster and the typical Roman stonework, as you can clearly see. And over this floor level here, you know, you've got the slabs, and they've been walked on and they've been loved and used, and not showing today. But if you look at the remains that they've excavated at Killeen, you get floor levels like this, but you don't actually get the walls standing. You get and this is a thing. So, and we didn't really know that anything like this still survived associated with Roman Britain. And one thing I was actually thinking of today, very much today, I was thinking of a very strange concept. I was thinking of approaching the idea. It's too late for my new book, but I was thinking of approaching Roman Britain from more along the lines of a Britain that was in the Roman period. Right, I know that's something that I talk about, and what I mean by that is it's just people that are living in Britain in the Roman period, the name given to the moment, because so often I get criticised by historians. They say, "Oh, Karl, you're obsessed with the Romans. You know, the Romans came over here and they influenced us." And I'm saying, yeah, I've always said that, and I'm just thinking to get around that, let's just call it a period that people lived that was called Rome. And because this type of building, even though these buildings are being built by the Roman military, inevitably afterwards they're being used by people like you and me. So it's a time that people lived in a period that the Romans set their mark. And that's one thing that I need to put across, more than saying this is the time of the Romans. Some of you might understand what I'm talking about, others might not, but maybe I could sort of explain that over the next few months. So again, it's that sort of sense of Roman remains. This is a building that they've also excavated at Binchester for public display, and they've got a little museum there. So the site is actually owned by the a local council. I think it's probably unlikely that this site has been open for the past year. So it's obviously lacked lots of the funding. But one thing that you don't get either is actually intact floor levels above hypercore systems, because what usually happens is that these stacks underneath the pili, that's another Latin word for you, Pat, pili, the stacks that support the suspended floor. Usually the floor level above is completely collapsed, but at Binchester it's really, really well preserved. And this is another area of Binchester that the floor level is in fact collapsed. But these stacks here are called pili. Now, if you go to somewhere like Cullean, the pili stacks are actually solid chunks of stone rather than these tiles. But usually, as a sense of Roman technology and innovation, you've got these stacks that are just tiles stacked up, and the pili system, the hypercore system, that not only heated the floors but also heated the walls and the level above, just like a modern central heating system. I think the difference between the Roman central heating system and our central heating system is that the Roman central heating system was a very expensive system to run. Mind you, you could argue that modern day human central heating systems are very expensive to run, but you need a workforce to keep a central heating system fed within the Roman building. And exactly the same thing happens with the Roman building as happens with a modern building. If you don't keep heat flowing around the building, you start to get structural problems, you start to get damp, you start to get problems with your wallpaper in a modern house because it gets damp. With the Roman building, you start to get problems with your plastered walls and your frescoes. So, you've got to keep the central heating systems operational within these buildings, and lots of efforts go into that. I've read facts about Roman central heating systems, that they would needed tons and tons of wood, timber, and timber is actually used for buildings, so I've got to use the right terms. There are tons and tons of wood to actually keep this system going, and it was a very, very expensive system, and in many ways it was not cost effective. There's one example of a Roman villa, for example, that's got a hypercore system somewhere in Britain, in the south. I never remember the name, or wish I always wrote it down in the past. That these. Hang on a minute, I got a cat problem in a minute. Bear with me. Is he upset you? Come on, Mary.
Carl's house is turning into a zoo.
It is a zoo.
You don't like the horrible black cat. It's okay.
I didn't know that they were so tall, these hypocast things. These stacks. They seem to stack them quite high.
They are quite high systems, to be honest with you, and
usually they're only about a foot or two, and this looks like it's 3 foot.
yeah. If you go back to that, you are right. These are actually quite high floors, and I think it's to do with the fact that there's a lot of dampness. They're keeping the building off the ground. Because if you that's a really, really good point, Pat, because when you think about it, the foundations of this building are actually a metre and a half in height, which
It's
is
like a basement in the United States. We have basements.
yeah, all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing with American buildings, isn't it? The basement's built with stone and the rest of it's made of wood.
Yeah.
But actually, Pat, that's not actually a silly thing, because with lots of Roman buildings in Britain, the foundations were stone, but then the rest of the structures inevitably timber, and this is what we're seeing. Anyway, before I was so rudely interrupted by the cat, the turkey doesn't like black creatures. He gets very upset. So anyway, so what I was saying before I was interrupted, there's a Roman villa in Britain that the native owners which is inevitably most of the people living at these sites. I know this is a military site, but then the civilians took over at Pinchester. But this Roman villa in Britain, they built a hypocaust system. They built a Roman villa, but there's no evidence that they ever used a hypocaust system. They never lit it. Because even though they wanted to build a Roman villa like the guy down the road, like the family down the road, they never used the hypocaust system. And that again is another indicator that the people who are inevitably living in the time of Roman Britain are the people like you and me, or in Pat's case, not like you and me because she's from America. So the other thing I wanted to look at briefly before we go to Fishbourne and have a nice little look at Fishbourne and have a look at the background of the Fishbourne Roman villa is this sense of the Roman Empire and how the Roman Empire developed. So when I come on, I think you were looking at some Latin and the idea of Latin and some Latin terms. So ab urbe condita, the foundation of the city of Rome in 753 BC. So there's little Rome, founded by Romulus and Remus. Now, you will note that tomorrow you will be listening to a presentation about, and I know Roger's already had it, you'll be listening to a presentation about Sicily. And one thing I was saying about Sicily was the Carthaginians on Sicily. And I'm trying to work out why Sicily is two massive islands there. Anyway.
It's not I think that's supposed to be Malta, Carl, isn't it?
Yeah, I think.
Too close.
Yeah, I think that's got to be Malta. Yeah, but anyway, the point is I know I mentioned about Sicily, and there are little islands around Sicily, but not that big. And one thing I mentioned is that the Carthaginians were at times a lot worse than the Romans, and that will be explained to you tomorrow. And the reason why I've mentioned that is because the Romans have been blamed for a very bloody conquest of the Mediterranean, and in many ways that could be said to be true. We do know that the Romans conquer this area where Italy is marked. This is the area of Tuscany, the Etruscans. We do know that the Etruscans were really treated badly. But then again, when it comes down to Greece, in many ways, Macedonia and Greece, they more or less slipped into the Roman way of life, because the Roman way of life was very similar to the Greek way of life. And then you've probably got more bloody conquest when you look at Syria. There's a bloody conquest when you look at Egypt, when you've got the conquest of Egypt by about 28 years BC. And you do have the Roman legions marching into Gaul. Probably not the same extent when you look at Spain, because Spain's argued over between Carthage and Rome. And bits of Africa are taken from the Carthaginians. And the lower part of Italy probably more or less just falls into Roman hands. So it's a bit of a mixed batch when we look at Roman conquest. But when you look at later Roman conquest, it is a little bit more bloody, when in fact you're constantly fighting with the people in the east, the empires in the east, the Persians and Parthians in the east, and then you actually get to where the Roman Empire eventually became. Now, this is probably the nice fluffy Roman Empire. When I talk about the nice fluffy Roman Empire, and notice, Bill, do you notice the whole of Britain is actually covered in one colour?
Yep, certainly is.
Yes, I think people are actually starting to. This is when we do talk about Rome, it's always a concept, right? And what I mean by a concept, it's that not every house in Britain had a Roman god in it. Not every settlement in Roman Britain was visited by a Roman official. And in many ways, when you think about it, it's a bit like Britain today. There are people living in Britain today who don't pay taxes. There are people living in Britain who live in woodlands, and they live in roundhouses in West Wales, and they're left alone, right? And they don't vote, and they're just left alone, and they don't have bank accounts. But they're still part of modern day Britain. And in many ways, that was what was going on with all the Roman Empire. There were whole areas of the Roman Empire that were not paying taxes, but they were within the Roman world, and that's always the point. That's more the point that I look at now. I don't talk about butch Roman soldiers wandering across the landscape, and wonderful rich Roman ladies hiding their gold underneath their sort of tunics and so on. And what I'm saying is, it's a concept, it's an idea. For example, we've just lived through a year of lockdowns and COVID, but there were still people in the lockdowns that weren't affected by the lockdown. But this is lockdown Britain, where they say everyone was affected. So it's the same thing as me saying this is Roman Britain, but not everyone is within that ilk. So just wanted to sort of feed into some of the other things that we'll be looking at over the next few weeks. And I would really like to look a little bit more at Greece and other sites in Italy. And there's one place on here that I don't really cover ever, and it's Ravenna. And there's actually Roman forts. There's Roman forts in beyond this Rhine River frontier, and there's Roman forts in that area that we're going to actually look at. But one thing is, the Romans did strive to go beyond the Rhine, and they constantly went beyond the Rhine, all the way over to sort of where modern day Poland is today. But they never really, it's said to be conquering it. And I think the natural barriers between the Germanic people is in fact the Alps, and the Rhine is the border between the Germanic people. And going all the way along this frontier, it's a landscape known as the Limes, which is like a frontier landscape, going all the way through to the Danube, all the way to the Black Sea. We do know that there's actually Roman colonies in the Crimea and all the way dotted around the Black Sea as well. And we know that the Romans are going a little bit further into Arabia, and there's talk of other trading posts further south in Arabia. And when for example we looked at the issue to do, not in these classes, but when we looked at the Canary Islands, I mentioned that there's a possibility that may have been a Roman trading post. So what you see in the map is not all of Rome, but it's the best that Rome could probably offer us as a broadcast. This is probably as Rome looked at the reign of Diocletian. There it is. That's exactly there. The reign of Diocletian in around the year 300 years AD. But bit by bit, the Roman world collapsed. Bits are taking off it, and things start to decline. But as I say, always the embodiment of Rome is in fact Christianity. So I don't know if anyone's actually been to this site. This is the site of the Fishbourne Roman Villa, or Roman Palace. Now, what we do know about this site is that nobody knew it existed before 1960. This site, start again. Yeah, that's right. Nobody knew this could have ever been there in the 1960s. It was found by complete accident, a whole Roman palace. And what you can see poking out there is little bits of Roman wall. Most The biggest percentage of this site has not been excavated. But what is on display is extraordinary. I used to belong to the West Sussex Archaeological Society, and they run this. And I used to go down there with my little son Ruben in his pushchair. We used to jump onto the train, and we used to go around this place. So I would leave in his little pushchair sleeping, and I would just wander around, and so there it is. It's near a Roman site known as Chichester, and also taking a note, it would be nice to look at Chichester as well. And Chichester itself is the main Roman port associated with Fishbourne. So if I want to enlarge this a little bit, one key thing I'd like to say is that we possibly knew that this existed in the history associated with a Romanized native British official called Verica. We knew that this existed, but we didn't know where it was. So in the history we knew it, but we didn't know where it was, because there's talk about a Roman palace being constructed, but we didn't know it was this one. So look at those mosaics, and that mosaic there is wow, yeah. So at this Roman palace, and I'm only going to show you a couple of images because I'd probably like to come back to this again. At this site, what you have is early Roman mosaics, like the monochrome designs, the black and white designs, to the very advanced Roman mosaics. So I can remember going around all these boardings, and they've got lots of coins. And in the research facility that they've got there, they've got buckets and bucket loads of nails, because when this palace is deteriorating, obviously all that's left is going to be the nails. So, you know, they've got bucket and bucket loads of nails associated with Fishbourne itself. So we do believe that Fishbourne itself is possibly being constructed a lot earlier than the Romans actually coming over to Britain. So, you know, we've got a very extensive site. So the discovery is really, really interesting. And so they didn't really catch on to it until 1961. There was something found in 1805 by accident, but they just thought it was just like a bit of ancient Roman ruin. They didn't think anything of it. And it wasn't thought to be anything like a palace. And it was just... And the strangest thing was... So back in 1805, workers discovered a 13-foot wide pavement, as well as fragments of columns. And bits of pottery were found, mosaics unearthed by local inhabitants. However, the locals were unable to conceive the fact that the findings were part of a larger unknown structure that remained below the surface. So back to what I said, it was only discovered in the 1960s. What they had found in 1805, they had no idea it was part of a huge palace. They thought it was just like a little building. That's all they thought. They didn't think anything of it, and it was just dismissed. It was dismissed from 1805 until 1960. In many ways, it was very similar to a Roman site in Barry. In Barry in the 1960s, they found a bit of a Roman building, and they thought, oh right, it's just a standalone square structure. And that standalone square structure, they had no idea was part of a much larger Roman building. But that square structure was demolished, and it wasn't until just under 20 years later that they then realised that it was part of a much larger building. And exactly the same is the same of Fishbourne. It wasn't until 1960 that an engineer from Portsmouth Water Company discovered the foundations of masonry building located north of the main road while digging a trench for a water main. So it was found because they found a water main. This rediscovery of the ancient structure caught the attention of Sussex Archaeological Society and triggered the first series of excavations undertaken by the very eminent Barry Cunliffe, who's still around today in 1961. So Cunliffe's findings from his excavations provide the most significant portion of the information associated with the site. So in the years following the initial excavation led by Barry Cunliffe, a series of further excavations were conducted, each of which focused on unearthing various other areas of the ancient site. In other words, this site turned out to be a massive site, a huge site, massive proportions.
Oh, right.
Dell's talking.
Always happy sitting in there. Probably.
We had to mute Dell because he was talking
Yeah.
away there. Yeah, had to be done. So, but the thing is, they actually thought very much that this was like, even in the 1960s, they had no idea still how big this site was. They had no idea how big it was. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you. This is only one of the wings. So there's 4 wings altogether, and so there it is. So this wing here. So hang on a minute. Let me get this right. That there is in fact this wing. So there's that wing, that wing, that wing, and the gardens. So in other words, all of that, you know, they've only excavated probably, if I want to get my maths in there right, and I want to get that right, they probably excavated about a fifth of it in total. And there's a little bit of a watery access to it as well. And look at that! Look at the way that is, and that's over time. So you've got a suspended floor underneath this, and you've got a hypercore system, and that's where it sort of started to sag, and you know it's still standing there. And what you've got is a sort of monochrome outline. So this is actually quite an early-ish mosaic, not the earliest. And what you then have is you've got the border with all the wonderful intricate designs, and you've got all these panels. Now, one thing I may have mentioned is that there's, and I don't know if I've mentioned it to you guys or I've mentioned this on Tuesday night or something, that in Britain in the Roman period there was different schools of mosaic makers, and this design of mosaic is very different from the mosaics that you're going to find. So this is in Sussex. So this is very different from the mosaics that you're going to find in, say, like Chedworth, or you're going to find in Brading Roman Villa on the Isle of Wight, or you're going to find in the likes of Corinian Cirencester, because what there is, there's schools of mosaic, craftsmen, and this is probably dedicated to a school that we haven't identified to be able to create something like this, and it is absolutely beautiful. It really, really is. And you know, one of the biggest crimes that I always feel is that when I've been to Hereford Museum and Library, there's a Roman city nearby Hereford called Kenchurch. Is it Kenchester or Kenchurch? I always get the that's right, yeah. So and what they've done with the mosaics, they've lifted them from the site and they've put them vertically on the wall, and it just looks, I can't, it's the worst thing ever, because where a mosaic needs to be is where it was created, where it was made, because a mosaic is there for a reason. It's proportioned, associated with light and the rooms, and what it would be associated with, not being stuck on a wall. And that's a criticism I got for the British Museum as well. You've got these massive mosaics in the British Museum, they're on the wall, and I just can't deal with that, because this is where a mosaic should be. So when you're looking around that's the sort of the reception over there, and you're looking at this and you're thinking this is a fifth of what there's available. Yeah, look at that again. Look at the perspective of that, and you've got all these watery associations. So this is opulence. So what I want to do is tell you a little bit more about the opulence and why not. So not only in the 1960s did they not really realise that this was absolutely huge, right? But it was now coming into a little bit further that other excavations would be excavated, and they started to realise that portions of the site expose significant evidence of human activity prior to the Roman conquest. So in other words, this site itself probably derived from a local individual wanting to be, in a sense, Romanized before Roman civilization really started to take over the likes of Roman Britain, as it would later to become. So there would be different stages of building this site, and this Fishbourne Palace might actually be associated with the Regni tribe, the likes of the likes of Verica, and the likes of another person who may have a claim to be the person who was resident here as the villa owner, a guy by the name of Cogid Dumnus. Now, just thinking of Cogid Dumnus. Now, he may have actually been here, as sort of a great sort of local warlord who sort of sided with the Romans and sort of hedged everything with him. So what we've probably got is that the earlier building was then probably demolished, and around 60 years AD it was rebuilt, and then it was rebuilt again, and it was continually being rebuilt. So what you've got a courtyard, which I'm going to show you, and there would be these very Mediterranean-like courtyards, a very plush, intricate courtyard. So we're going to just sort of move away from that just briefly, and we'll come back to these in a moment. Hang on a minute. So this area here, this is the sort of gardens, and they've got more of these gardens over here. There's a whole east wing that's not been excavated, and the west wing, some of the west wing is in people's gardens, right? So you've got the north wing, and the south wing is directly underneath these houses. And there's another little bit of a story as well, which I've which is actually in the literature when you go to the site, that they not only found when they were excavating in 1960 and they're putting a water mains in there, when they were putting posts to lay out the gardens, they were finding out that the reason why the posts didn't go into the ground is because in the south wing there was actually mosaics directly underneath them, and it's just that thing. And over here they've laid out these nice gardens into the area where the actual building is, to sort of give you an idea. So this is what's going on. It's likely that the arrangements of some of the gardens, particularly here, are associated with beds, the actual beds associated with the original root systems. So this is really interesting. That what we do have is that the modern museum building here that I've mentioned, and the boundary of the boundary of the likes of the modern houses, and the likes of the route of the A259. And when I mentioned the I've got my wings mixed up. The one that we've been looking at with the mosaic floors and all the rest of it is in fact this wing in blue where the buildings are, and not the it's the north wing I've been showing you, but not the west wing that I indicated on the plan. So, but what we've got is, you can clearly see that only a little proportion of this has actually been excavated and is actually available, this area here. And it is quite amazing that, and you've got this road, and lots of this is going to be under the road and the houses. So you can imagine excavating in your garden, and you've got part of the Roman palace. It must be quite an amazing phenomenon. It really, really is. And these are the designs of the earlier mosaics that I actually mentioned earlier on, the very earlier styles, the sort of plain black and white designs. So these are the earlier designs, and they get more and more technical, more and more advanced. So I'm going to go back to my notes again and just sort of look a little bit more at my notes. So we mentioned that the owner of the palace may have been some of these early Waldy statesmen. For example, the name of Togedumnus, as we've already mentioned. And what we do have is there's a temple associated with Neptune, and there's a temple associated with Minerva as well. So, who's yawning in the background? Is that you, Roger? Roger, I've got to mute you a minute because you're doing my head in. So, one thing about this site is that why it's so well preserved is that there is overwhelming evidence that, for example, one of the wings of the building was completely destroyed by a fire in around 270. For instance, some of the rubble from the collapsed roof, as well as its tiles and melted fittings, were scattered on the ground floor, while some of the burnt doors remain standing. So, in other words, part of the building, the north wing, was completely destroyed by fire, and there's such extreme heat that for example, the tiles were extensively discoloured, and the building was never, that part of the building was never ever rebuilt. There's also another name that comes into the mix. It's likely sometime in about 280, the site may have been taken over by the usurper Roman commander who would become a Roman emperor by about 286, known as KARL-JAMES. He may have actually been at this locality, and it's very, very odd that you've got this site that seems to be a very important factor in understand Roman Britain. So you've got some of the native, local, great, well-to-do tribal leaders from the Regnai tribe, and then what you've got, it comes into history again under KARL-JAMES. But probably by about the 300s, the site seems to be dismantled, and it seems to be sort of left to decay. So the site of the palace was actually later used as a burial ground in the Saxon period, and as we've said, it's completely disappeared by the time of the 1800s. Now, one of the amazing things about this site is why it is displayed today, why it is available for people to look at it today. So, and why you've got this sort of wonderful, this is huge. And again, if you want to compare this with the plan earlier on, I mentioned it was this quarter. I was actually referring to this quarter here on the right. So that's a mistake there. I do apologise. But again, only a fifth of this site is actually on display today. So if we go back to that again, and it's just thinking about the gems that are available. And this is actually in private ownership. And a museum was erected over the excavated palace by the Sussex Archaeological Society in order to protect and preserve some of the remains in situ. The museum incorporates most of the visible remains, including one wing of the palace, as I've already mentioned. The gardens were replanted using authentic plants from the Roman period, including roses. Yes, the Romans had roses, lilies, rosemary, various fruit trees, and boxed hedges. Now, when I mentioned at the beginning, I mentioned about medieval and Roman gardens, and the idea of the box hedge is introduced by the Romans. So you've got the box bush or the box tree, which is a native British variety of tree that is going to be used to create their boxed hedges. A team of volunteers and professional archaeologists are involved in a continuing research archaeological excavation on the site or nearby. They think that there may actually be Roman military buildings associated with the Fishbourne site. So the site has actually been closed since the pandemic in March 2020. And unfortunately, this is an unfortunate thing, because of the pandemic. The site is in trouble at this minute because they've lost about £1 million of income that would have gone into the site to offer more research, to assist with presentation. So the site's taken a little bit of a hit in funding, so that's been a little bit of a shame. But one thing I want to sort of show you, just sort of I've just got a little bit of a trail of images that I'm going to show you now. and I'm going to get these up. So we're gonna have a look at these. Some last nice testers. And again, look at that again. You can see this nice little mosaic in front of us there, which we're going to actually look at. And again, all these walk boards. So again, just stressing that what we've got at the site is only a small proportion of what's available there today. Hang on a minute, I've just lost my bearings a minute. So if I can go back again. Roger, you seem to have a little bit of a sniffle there. What's wrong? Rog?
It's the cold day.
Oh, right, yeah, it is a mighty cold day. I'm just going to try and
If
get
you're
these...
out about with my mate shopping, terrible. Really, showers.
You out shopping, Rog?
Been out.
Fair enough. So anyway, go to this. Roger, stop riching your eyes. You're making us all feel ill.
Oh.
So again, looking at that, I think that's a really nice reconstruction, isn't it? It's really nice. So
Yeah.
So what we're talking about is these buildings over on the right. These are the buildings that have been reconstructed. Now, obviously, not reconstructed. These are the buildings that have been excavated. When I say over on the right, over on the left, you're right. So again, these are the rooms here. And actually, even the wing that they've excavated, there's bits of the wing that haven't been excavated. So you've got a bit of a corridor here. You've got all these nice little corridors leading into all these rooms, individual rooms, and sort of then it looks into the outdoor space of the courtyard. And when you think about it, 30 metres, 90 odd metres of archaeology on display, which is and the rooms are full of these beautiful floors. They are beautiful. It really is beautiful. And again, look at the amount of colour. So again, what you do, you've got a massive contrast of types. So if you want to study mosaics, you go to this site, because what you have, you've got mosaics that are over a long period at the site. Basically, you know, you've got the earlier mosaics, the monochrome ones, and then you've got the very dainty, complicated ones. And by about the 300s, the site sort of disappears into history, and the probably not completely, but more or less disappears. We don't know what's going on in the other buildings. Maybe one wing was burnt down. We don't know. And what we've got a stucco fragment, basically stuccoing basically the cladding on the stone and brickwork. So we've got lots of little bits of architecture that is available. Again, this sort of formal garden complex box hedging built in the original foundations of the gardens there, and again it's just such a nice place to go to if you just wanted to take in Rome and be within Rome. So look at that shell mosaic. Now that is really interesting because it's very different from the mosaics that we've been seeing. It's a very, very different design, and again, this isn't a complete mosaic because it's been damaged. And one thing about mosaics is that they always look good when you get a bit of a damp cloth and you sort of rub over it and sort of make it look. And actually, what I've seen them do that, they get their experts in there and volunteers, and they clean it up and sort of. And they sort of spit and polish and they look really good. But again, that's a really, really, really a revolutionary, different design of mosaic. And that's not the type of thing that you'd usually see. And when a few weeks ago, was it last week or the week before? Last week, we looked at the Chedworth Roman villa, and I mentioned about this mosaic design. And I know Jessica looked at it with you guys, and I think what Jessica said, she said that the mosaic that you were looking at Chedworth, the late mosaic from the 430s, comes out of the Roman period into the period when people were just remnants of Roman society creating these mosaics. But I don't take that line. I say it's Roman society continuing in some areas, using the traditions, but probably in a different way. This again is somebody else from another school. This hasn't got all the other fixtures and fittings of the. If you want to compare this with, for example, that is very different. So in other words, it's a bit like the mosaic owner wanted a pattern carpet in one room with thick pile, and then in the other room they've got a plain carpet with really thin pile. This is what we're talking about. And we know from fragmentary evidence that they've actually got frescoes in them, panelled frescoes. Not as ornate and designed as the ones that you might actually find at Pompeii, but panels of frescoes. But again, we're only talking about 1/5 of the building that's actually been excavated, so there's a lot more to look at. And ask me the question, why don't they excavate more of it? Well, unfortunately they have been, but because we've had this silly pandemic, they haven't been able to get the funding together to do more work. So I don't think we're going to see much work at Fishbourne for the foreseeable future, whilst they start to get things moving again. And look at that again. That is a floor, a monochrome design floor, which is, again, do you see my point? This is completely different from the other mosaic designs, all in the same building. In a way, if you look at this, you're almost as if you're looking at. It's almost as if this is 2D, where in fact this represents a vertical wall. This represents a horizontal horizon. And again, this is black and white, and this is actually as complicated as all the other designs, because you need to be really good at designing the lines there. This is as complicated as any of the other designs, because if you get one of the pieces out, the whole thing goes skew-whiff. So I think this is as grand as the other ones, but on a different level. There's grandness, and there's all these different things. So I'm just gonna mention probably one or two more details about Fishbourne, and then I think that'll be a nice end for today. So I'm just gonna go back to just one of those images of Fishbourne, and if we go back again, look at that. So that there is on top of something like this. So you have, and this is exactly what Pat was talking about, but I think this is this is lower down, and it's probably because it's not as damp there. It's a chalkier landscape. It's better drained, and this is a hypercore system that isn't massively high, and I don't think I'm going to go in there to clean it out. Do you know what I mean? The other hypercore systems, you could probably put a slave down there and you could clean that thing out, but I don't think you're going to get anybody down there to clean this one out. But this is gonna support a suspended floor, and you can clearly see the floor level there around it, give you an idea of the floor. And if I just point to my notes again, and this is where I'm going to go. I'm just going to get my notes back up again. Just probably is talking about this site itself is again really well cited because it's associated with the with Chichester and water systems and all the rest of it. So the decoration of the palace was elaborate. This is amazing. And actually, you may ask me the question, and I'm going to answer it. The question is, are there other palaces like this in Britain? Yes, there is. There is another one in Britain like this. It's I'll give you a clue. We're going to do it next week. But that other site, they found a mosaic, a massive mosaic there. It was a Time Team episode as well, and in this Time Team episode, they worked in an area where in a cemetery they found this massive mosaic on the floor associated with another palace, which was probably equally bigger than this one. So there are other palace sites in Britain. We know of at least 2, maybe 3, and this is one of them. So we've got the stucco mouldings, and we've got the marble pseudo panels. You've got foreign craftsmen being employed in this, and you've got the likes of the original native leader, and you've got various designs associated with Medusa, and you've got the final alterations to this site. And with that, I think I think if you ever do get out to go out and ever you want to go down to Fishbourne, Chichester, this is a place to definitely go to. And in this day and age, these are the places that you need to go to, and to sort of support these sites, so that your money going into the site will actually assist in the further research work at Fishbourne. So on that note, what we're going to do, we're going to actually call that a day, note-wise. Are there any questions?
Yeah, got a few, Carl.
Go for it. Do you want me to get any images up so you can refer to it?
No. With Fishbourne, obviously a full survey has been done of the site with ground penetrating radar to come up with a digital representation they have, which proves what a huge villa this was.
Yeah.
And obviously the man who lived there, and you gave his name, was a man of high status. Could even have been the Governor General of Britannia at the time, who knows?
Yeah. Now, stop that, Bill. That's really an important point. One thing that we don't know is when Julius Caesar Vide Vici, when Julius Caesar came, saw he conquered. That's what he did. Now, when he came to Britain in his failed invasion of 56, 55, 54 BC, he held a tribute of 12 warlords in Britain, kingdoms, even the King of Orkney, right? So he accepted tribute. And what he basically said is that now I've conquered Britain. He didn't go beyond London. Now I've conquered Britain. You've now got to pay tribute to the Roman Empire. Is one thing that we don't know for that 100 years is what does that mean? Did he basically have warlords that would feel that they were Roman? We've got evidence, for example, of Fishbourne. We've got evidence of Colchester as well, maybe Canterbury, Cantai, and we've also got Caliva Atrabatum. So there's a lot going on in Britain before the Romans actually get here, as a proper Roman period. This is the point, the Roman period.
Yeah, Fishbourne is such a huge villa.
Yeah.
It's got so many rooms.
Yeah.
Why so big? Because obviously there must have been dozens and dozens, and hundreds actually living there.
About 100.
Who all these people were, obviously a lot of them was support staff, servants, etc., but it's so big, it's huge. We did actually discuss the possibility of going there some years back when you were asking for suggestions of where to go on the Orphan Dino, and this did crop up. But yeah, sometime in the future, all things being equal, COVID allowance, it would be nice to actually go down and to see this site, but there are other Roman sites in that general area as well, And you mentioned there are other sites in the UK similar. I was in the Isle of Wight a few years back, and I went to a site then. Can't remember the name.
Is that Brading?
Oh, it could be. Yes, that's the one.
It's Brading, yeah.
It is covered just like Fishbourne,
In the middle of... Yeah.
Wonderful mosaics, not as big, but yeah, they were dotted around the place, So these people were obviously very, very wealthy and had money to throw around everywhere, And the person who lived in Fishbourne, I suspect he was a man of culture, because what he's done with the mosaics, he's actually had so many different styles. Possibly, they were meant to represent the way the design of mosaics have actually progressed through the centuries. And he just wanted to do it to fulfill his own sense of heritage and obviously impress people, But yeah, what a wonderful site it was. Really
I think it's I think the various metaphors could be I think the best thing to say is that in the Second World War and after the Second World War, we embraced American society. We could say that we started having red Santa Clauses and bottles of Coca-Cola, and we started having the music from the United States and all these other things, right? So as culture, we become Americanized. And because lots of us wanted to do that, women wanted the nylons, the boys and the girls wanted the candy off the American troops and all the rest of it. So in a minor way, it was happening in the 1940s and 1950s in our own culture, and this is what we're talking about. But one thing we're also talking about is that the American population didn't come over and settle here. What they left was cultural exchange. And this is what we're talking about Roman Britain, is that some people took, I think this is a really important point, some people took the idea of Americanism in the 1940s too far. So, you know, they decorated their houses as American people. And this is exactly what happened in Roman Britain. People started seeing, right, I'm not going to do the Roman thing, but I might actually purchase some Roman items to go around the house. Other people took it too far, and they built palaces like that. And this is what's happening. The one thing that is very, very important is that the majority of Roman period settlements in Britain are roundhouses, right? The majority of them are, but you've got a small minority of Roman villas, and this is the thing. There aren't many palaces like this. There was probably one in London somewhere, and you know there was probably one on the Isle of Wight somewhere as well as Brading, and then you've got the one that we're looking at next week, and this one and a few others. But that's all there were, right? Because the majority of people were like us, right? And the other thing as well is it's like modern day society as well. How many of us live in mansions with acres and acres of land? None of us, right? None of our members, 70 odd members, none of us do. But if we had 1,000 members, I'm sure we would come across one person that would. And this is exactly Roman Britain.
Yeah. Maybe in the future, Carl, something to think about, possibly.
Yeah, this has been one of those things. I think I think it has been bandied around, and I think Pat said she'd only go on it if I went. Thanks, Pat. I do remember that discussion, and then it went to mind my French. You went to shit, so that was it.
Well, I gotta go.
Thanks for that, Bill. And you going to say anything, Del? Go on, say something.
Yeah, I've got to go. I really enjoyed that. I've been to Chichester a few times because my wife was in college there many years ago. I think I've been to see it. I've been to so many places. I can remember walking on a walkway, looking at mosaics.
That was here.
Yeah.
It was definitely here. Yeah, I would go with that.
Yeah. Sorry, I've got to go.
Okay, Del. We'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Take care, Del. Cheers. That's good. I just fed the turkey a grape. He's liking that. Okay. You can't make it up. I really can't. Oh, I got to tell you this, right? In an official party launch last Thursday, where I was where I was doing the admin in the background. Unfortunately, I left my mic on, so the official party launch has got a turkey gobbling in the background. And the party president, he said, that's got to be one of the most interesting party political broadcasts we've ever done, because it's the only one that you've got a turkey in it as well. Right, who's going to talk now? Let's have Roger.
Well, I was just thinking, Carl, that my lady, she lives in Dorset, which isn't that far from West Sussex.
No, it's not.
Grandmother's home as well.
An hour away?
Something like that, I guess.
Yeah.
But I'm down there the end of next month, all being well, with no other restrictions stopping everything. And it might be an idea then to pop over. The thing is, though, is there much to see at the moment? Everything's closed up, or what?
Well, actually, it's going to be open on the 17th of May. Roger, can you do me a favour, right?
Yeah. Well, that'd be okay.
Phone before you go, right? Yeah. Phone me or something before you go, right? And if you do go, let me know, and I'll send you some money to put in a donation box, right?
Right. Okay.
Yeah, that'd be nice to.
It should be the end of May, bank holiday thing. Everything,
Well, give me a ring. Give me a ring.
I'll give you a tinkle on that before I go down there.
Yeah, please do. I'll see if it's open, and I'll see if the I'll see if the manager's there, and he can meet you at the door.
Okay, then. I'll have to fix up.
Well, if it's the same manager, that's 10
I've heard
years ago.
bits about this site before, but not to this depth you've done today, so it'd be brilliant. to see what it is, because those mosaics are wonderful. One thing I realized is they used tesseract to build up the mosaics. But what are the source of the tesseract? What some stone?
Everything. Everything. You're going to import all different bits of stone from all across the Roman Empire. So yeah.
Any stone, anything.
Everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
You might break up a statue of Nero because you felt you were a tosser, and you'd use that as little bits of tessera. You would, yeah.
A skill to break up the test to make the tesseract. Yeah.
Exactly.
Brilliant, wonderful.
And you'd have little slave like Bill, sort of, nicely sort of making them perfect. So
yeah, that's it. Yeah, good.
And talking about people who's one of my slaves, Richard.
Mute.
He's
Not
on
really
mute.
interesting, Carl.
Yeah, I think Richard's not into the Romans at all. So
Well, I am a bit more now.
see, I've inspired him. Him. So okay. On that note, so what I want to do, I might look at Ravenna next week, and I'm going to mention this other Roman palace site in Britain, right?
Carl, I wanted to say something.
Didn't we do you?
No.
No.
All right, then. Whilst you're doing that, I'm going to finish my grapes and chuck one to the turkey.
Okay. A few things. When I was in Berlin, I was told to go to the Bergman Museum, and you go up these stairs, and you get to the top, and there's these beautiful mosaics on the floor. Where did they come from? What are they doing in Bergman? Is that
the Pergamon Museum? You know what we're going to do? We'll look at that next week because I'd want to know as well. Because the one thing I want to do is the Roman forts, the Roman forts in Germany actually. And when you talk about Roman forts in Germany beyond the Rhine, people look at you glazed over.
I don't know that it's from Germany. They might have stolen it from Turkey or somewhere.
Oh no, come on, that's blasphemy. You can't accuse the Germans of stealing anything. They've never invaded anywhere, and they've never taken anything from anyone else's country. How dare you?
And the other thing is, I went to Cyprus, in Cyprus.
Yeah, where to? Because I'll know
they
where
have beautiful mosaics, west.
Paphos.
Yeah, Paphos.
Is that where it is? Yeah.
Paphos, yeah.
Gorgeous, well preserved,
Yes.
ornate, fantastic. And the last thing is, remember the very first time you took me to
Caerleon.
We went into this area near the Forum, and on the wall was paintings, mosaic or painting. And you said this is all going to be gone because they're not protecting it.
Yeah, it all went, all of it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we could see about a square yard of it.
Yeah.
I think it's at least
Like
that
the
much.
weathering and all that.
Yeah. Basically, it was all lost. But this is, this is. Don't go there.
Okay, what room was that? What was that area where it was?
That was the audience chamber, the building of the magistrator at the back of the forum in
right, the audience chamber. You said
the audience chamber where they would have all sat to decide things that were going on with KARL-JAMES.
Oh right, okay, thank you.
Do you know what? Right, do you know what? I if I had a car back then, right, I would have. I would have taken all that off the bloody wall, but unfortunately I didn't, and that's the way things happen. But it's just a shame. But I've always got a sore point on that, and
I don't know if I took a picture because it was so dark and it was sort of under the trees, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. The problem is because I'm supposed to be cooperating and working with the museum at this minute, I can't really comment any further.
Okay.
So
it was very interesting. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. So on that note, we're going to call it a day. So we'll see you tomorrow. Pat, you're joining tonight, and Bill, you're joining tonight, yeah? And
Yes.
And Richard's going tonight as well, so that's good.
Yeah.
Don't forget tonight, Richard is tonight.
And 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock, yeah. 7 o'clock, yeah. Right. And Roger's like Billy No Mates because you don't know what the hell I'm on about. Anyway, talking. And Roger, before you say any more, I will hopefully be sending you these in the post so you can get them before you moan next week.
Okay.
And I got your check, Rog.
Right, cheers, well done. Good.
It was made of rubber, but my bank will take
Oh, there
anything.
we are. James, isn't it? James. Okay, thanks, Carl. Well done.
Thank you.
Take care, all.
Bye.
Look after yourself.
Take care.
Yeah,
More
everyone.
next week. Thanks for joining me. Cheers.
Thanks, Carl. Thank you.
My pleasure. Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Take care. Take care. That was a good one. Happy days. That was pretty good. Oh, I'd get the orientation wrong with that. Oh my god. Anyway, archaeological plans and orientation. They had to be excavating. Not. It was the north wing, and which is. Oh, anyway. Anyway, thanks for watching. Thank you very much.